Alright, this book is Sue Grafton's book. It's called X is for... What is X for? Well, it's just called X. But my mom loves all these books. And she loves all Sue Grafton books. And she started with the alphabet A and went all the way to Z. But my mom is in a nursing home and she can't have visitors right now. So I thought I would read her a chapter or two. So this is all I have at home. But she loves Sue Grafton and this is X. So I'm going to read this to my mom. And to anybody else I want to listen, but for her because she can't have visitors right now. In the beginning, Teddy Zancas would have to steal the painting. What other choice did she have? She believed it was a Turner. A possibility she couldn't confirm unless she shipped it to the Tate in London, where the Turner scholars Evelyn Jall and Martin Butlin in particular could make a judgment about its authenticity. Unfortunately, the painting was currently in the basement of the house that was now solely in Ari's name, where it had sat for years, unrecognized and unappreciated. She might have blamed herself for the oversight. But why on earth would anyone expect to find a priceless painting in such homely company? She and Ari had bought the house when they moved from Chicago to Santa Teresa, California. The estate had been owned by the Carpenters, who passed it down from generation to generation, and the last surviving family member died in 1981. They had neglected to write a will. So the estate attorney had locked all the doors and put the house up for sale. Teddy and Ari had bought it fully equipped and fully furnished, right down to the rolls of toilet paper in the linen closet and 3 sets of sterling flatware in the silver vault. The antiques, including several exquisite Persian carpets, were appraised as part of the purchase price, but in the process, a small group of paintings had been overlooked. The attorney had paid the taxes owed, handling the IRS and the state of California, handing the IRS and the state of California hefty sums of money to which they were entitled. Teddy and Ari had made use of a number of the antiques in furnishing the mansion's first and second floors. The rest they'd move into a complex of storage rooms below. The paintings were in a cabinet in an upright rack, and each leaning against its neighbor. Teddy had come across the painting shortly after they had moved in. Over the years, she developed an eye for fine art, but these paintings were drab and they were very uninteresting. The subject matter was classical: nymphs, mythological figures, Roman ruins, a seascape, heavy-legged peasant women bringing in a harvest, a still life with a dead duck and rotting fruit, and a floral arrangement in colors she did not care for. It was after she and Ari divorced, and they both signed off on the settlement, that she realized one of the paintings that she had so carelessly dismissed might be an original painting by Joseph Mallard William Turner, whose work sold at auctions for millions of dollars. Her rationalization for the contemplated theft was as follows. 1. Ari had no appreciation of art. The collection she put together comprised the works of groups known as Le Petit Maître, minor impressionists like Bartoli, Canet, Jacques Lambert, and Pierre-Louis Casabon, whose paintings were still affordable, because the artists themselves had never achieved the legendary stature of Cézanne, Renoir, Monet, Van Gogh, and their ilk. The collection had already been awarded to her in the settlement, so why not this one small additional painting? If Ari realized, 2, if Ari realized the true value of the painting, they'd only get into another wrangle as to which one of them was entitled to it. And if they couldn't agree, which seemed inevitable, a judge would force a sale and divide the money equally between them. In this one tiny instance, money did not interest her. The Turner was a treasure, and she'd never see a treasure like that again in her lifetime, and she was determined to have it. R.D. had already screwed her over once, quite literally, by having a dalliance with Stella Morgan, the woman Teddy had once considered her best friend. Always happens, doesn't it? Your best friend? Stella's husband, Douglas, was the architect who designed the remodel of a condominium Ari and Teddy owned in downtown Santa Teresa. It was while he was overseeing construction that he was stricken with a fatal heart attack. Months passed. After the remodeling work was finished, Ari and Teddy continued to see Stella, who had adjusted to her widowhood as best she could, with all the money as compensation. Then came disaster. That September, Teddy spent a weekend in Los Angeles, attending a seminar at the Getty, and on Monday, when she arrived home, she hadn't been in the house an hour before an acquaintance rang her up and gave her blow by blow what had happened. Teddy's options were limited: fight, flight, play dead, or screw him. She slapped Ari with divorce papers within the week. He got the house, which she couldn't afford to maintain anyway. She got the flat in London. He got a sizable chunk of jewelry, including the necklace he'd given her for their 10th anniversary. She freely confessed she was bitter about that. The stocks and bonds had been sorted out between them. The division was fair and square, which pissed her off to no end. There was nothing fair and square about a cheating husband who'd boffed her best friend. In a further cruel twist of fate, in the division of their assets, Teddy had been awarded the very condominium where the architect had breathed his last breath. More real estate was the last thing that she needed. Her broker priced the condo at $1 million plus and assured her of a quick sale. The apartment sat for 18 months without a nibble. Teddy decided the place would be more attractive if it were properly furnished and decorated. So she hired a Santa Teresa stager named Annabelle Wright and instructed her to cherry-pick the items in Ari's basement for that purpose. He agreed because the hostilities had gone on long enough and he wanted her out of his hair. Once the condo was suitably tarted up, Teddy had hired a photographer to do a shoot, and the resulting 4-color brochure was circulated among real estate agents in Beverly Hills. A well-known actor had snapped it up, all cash, no contingencies, and a 10-day escrow. The deal was done, and all that remained was for the two of them to sign off so Teddy could collect her check. In the meantime, and this was Teddy's final rationalization, number 4, Ari and Stella had gotten married. Her best friend. Teddy had moved to Bel Air by then, living in the guest house of a friend who'd taken pity on her and invited her to stay for an unspecified period of time. It was during the 10-day escrow, while papers were being drawn up, that someone spotted the painting that appeared in the brochure, a seascape shown hanging above the fireplace in the living room. This was a dealer who owned a gallery on Melrose and had an unerring eye for the finer things in life. He'd glanced at the photograph and then brought it closer to his face. A nanosecond later, he picked up the phone and called Teddy, who'd been a customer of his. "This looks like a Turner, darling. Could it possibly be genuine?" "Oh, I doubt it," said Teddy. "That's been sitting in the basement for years." "Well, if I were you, I'd send color photographs to the Tate to see if someone can establish the provenance. Better yet, take the painting yourself and see what they have to say." What harm could it do? Heeding his advice, she decided to retrieve the painting and have it examined by experts, where she signed the final papers on the sale and then drove from the broker's office to the condominium. She'd been told the new owner would be taking possession of the following weekend, as soon as the place had been emptied. So when she let herself in, she was astonished to see the apartment had already been stripped to the bare walls. No furniture, no art, no Persian carpets, and no accessories. She'd call Ari, who was gleeful. He said he'd known she'd dash in and confiscate any items she took a fancy to, so he made a preemptive strike and emptied the place. If she wanted to dispute the move, she could have her attorney contact his. As she no longer had access to the painting, she approached the photographer and asked to see his proofs. There were several clear shots of the painting, which was really quite a lovely painting now that she had the chance to examine it more closely. It was a seascape with a flat beach and a sky streaked with clouds. In the background, cliffs were visible, probably the Margate Cliffs, a Turner favorite. In the foreground, a boat appeared to have foundered. The boat itself, she learned later, was known as a xebec, a small 3-masted ship having an overhanging bow and stern and both square and lateen sails. The tonal quality was delicate, gradations of brown and grays, with touches of color here and there. She asked for and was given 4 prints of the picture. At that point, she realized she better buckle down to work. She moved back to town and embarked on a comprehensive self-education. She studied the J.M.W. Turner catalog and any other biological information she could get her hands on. Turner had died in 1851. The bulk of his artistic output he'd left as a bequest to the National Gallery in London. 318 paintings went to the Tate and National Gallery, and 35 oil sketches to the British Museum. The remaining 200 plus paintings were in private collections in Great Britain and America. 9 paintings were unaccounted for. The appearance of one such painting, whose whereabouts and size were unknown, had been mentioned in the November 1833 Magazine of Fine Arts, described as a beautiful little picture. It was hung in the Society of British Artists exhibition that same year. Its owner was one J. Carpenter, about whom nothing else was known except that he had loaned a Hogarth and a Molon to the same collection. Teddy's eyes filled with tears, and she had to honk discreetly into a tissue. She drove to the Santa Teresa County Architectural Archives and then to the Santa Teresa Dispatch to research the family who'd had the painting in his possession for so many years. Jeremy Carpenter IV had immigrated from England to America in 1899, bringing with him a sizable family and a ship's hold filled with household goods. The home he built in Montebello, which taken 5 years to complete, was finished in 1904. Teddy made 3 trips to the house, thinking she could walk in casually and remove the painting without attracting notice. Unfortunately, Ari had instructed the staff to usher her politely to the door, which is what they did. Of one thing she is certain, she could not let Ari know of her interest in the seascape or her suspicions about his pedigree. She thought she had plenty of time to devise a plan, but then she learned the newlyweds had leased the house for a year to a couple from New York. Ari and Stella were taking a delayed honeymoon, after which they moved into the contemporary home that Stella owned. Ari was apparently taking the opportunity to clear out the basement. His intention was to donate the bulk of the items to a local charity for the annual fundraiser coming up next month. She'd have to act fast, and she'd have to do it soon. The task she faced was not entirely unfamiliar. She'd stolen a painting once before, but nothing even close to one of this magnitude. Okay, so that was in the beginning, and now I'm going to start with chapter 1. We'll start that next. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.